We are still trying to plead with them to be sensible, to be humane, and to release those hostages that are in there.
After the deadline, we will kill everybody here, all the hostages.
For the first time ever, there's the chance to go behind the cloak of secrecy that is the SAS. SAS, the complete soldier's story, which includes unseen footage and interviews. Experience the grueling training.
Did you go to school? They don't even know where you are!
The incredible action. The amazing speed. And the unbelievable strength of the greatest fighting force in history. Also available from the explosive and compelling TV series are a further 4 videos.
They always say, luck shines on the brave.
These are the men who risk everything.
When you join a force like the SAS, you know that you'll be used for the best jobs.
And for whom killing is instinct.
That's what we get paid for. You go in hard. You go in hard and kill them, or else they'll kill you.
Get the SAS's side of the story. Get the videos and get viewing.
For the first time ever, SAS soldiers reveal the inside story on their operations around the world. They also show just what it takes to join the world's most elite regiment, the SAS.
The busting of the embassy siege in 1980 was the SAS calling card to the world. It said acts of terrorism would no longer be tolerated on British soil. That force would be met with force. The role of the SAS, in fact, is many roles. It depends on the war, it depends on who the enemy is, it depends on what the job is. In Malaya and Borneo, the regiment was fighting jungle fighters. In Dhofar, we were fighting communist-inspired desert fighters, basically. A totally different form of warfare. We can fight in built-up areas, as in Northern Ireland, the siege at Princess's Gate. The role is so varied and covers so many fields of warfare, you could call us universal soldiers.
The SAS is the best trained regiment in the world. Its soldiers are chosen through the toughest selection process there is. Very few men are able to survive this test. Much of what we do is secret and cannot be shown. What you will see are the things that make us different, that makes us the best, that ultimately sets us apart from the rest.
All our close quarter battle drills are carried out in an area called the killing house. Here we use live ammunition in rooms with 360 degrees arcs of fire. We are the only ones who do this. Dangerous and realistic. The main quality of siege busting room combat is speed, aggression and surprise. Once the roller ball starts moving, nothing can stop it. You've got to maintain the momentum. You need guys with immense physical courage, strength, stamina, all the key points of joining the SAS.
The SAS is actually recognised as the best counter-terrorist team in the world. One, because of the amount of training they do, and the motto that we use is train hard, fight easy.
Okay, guys, gather in. Safety catches on.
Anywhere where a group of terrorists take over a position and fortify it, the SAS role is to bust the place wide open and neutralise the threat.
Okay, that was a good effort there. A good effort. Good momentum. Good movement down the actual passageway. Just a bit of a problem in this room here. We had a stoppage. Okay, let's get inside here, sort the situation out, and let's get on with the work.
We have a technique where we can completely black out the killing house. We then do a PNG shoot, PNG being passive night goggles, and it brings up the interior of the building just like daylight.
Don't forget, if you're in training, guys, stoppage, cry out stoppage, down on one knee, clear the stoppage, and carry on with the exercise. If you're doing it operationally and you're doing multi-room clearance, stoppage! Sling your weapon to one side, bring out your backup or secondary weapon, carry on firing. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Dusty, why don't you do a demonstration here on the actual stoppage rules? Okay, his gun is firing all right. Gun stops.
Stop it!
Okay, can you see that? It's as simple as that. Carry on firing, keep the momentum going. Don't forget, I want to see you go through these premises like shit through a goose. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Well, is there any problems?
No.
Okay, let's go back and try it again.
All soldiers that do the SP team in Hereford are seasoned soldiers. They've been in combat and they know what it's like to be at the sharp end, have incoming rounds zipping over their heads. So they're not worried about a bit of gunfire. You can train a person to perfection, but when there's rounds coming down and rounds zipping over your head, who knows how you're going to react until that day comes. We had an interesting little exercise to initiate the young, inexperienced troop officer.
Straight ahead and don't fucking move. Right?
We would place two figure 11 targets 3 foot apart, and in between these two targets we would place the young troop officer. The place would then, or the range would then be totally blackened out, and we had two of our best shots burst in. The torches would come on, and both figure 11 targets on either side of the troop officer would be well drilled, at least one magazine apiece into each target. And don't forget, the guy in the middle was live, a live body. And this we call the battle inoculation test. We had a few fidgets, but no one ever actually moved into the line of fire. This is what discipline and training does for you.
Someone once said to me, are SAS soldiers better than any other soldiers? What we have to realise firstly about the SAS is this. 1, soldiers are drawn from all of Her Majesty's forces. Navy, RAF, Royal Marines, Parachute Regiment. And each one of them that joins a squadron is actually an ambassador of his regiment. What you're looking for is, first of all, physical fitness, determination, the will to carry on when he wants to give in, to be able to go through a pain barrier, if you like, guts and determination, and professionalism. This is what the SS are looking for.
The first phase of selection is a series of forced marches across the Brecon Beacons. You have to achieve a distance of 4 kilometres an hour, carrying heavy weights. Once you've passed the first 4 weeks physical selection, there's a great deal of euphoria felt by the students themselves because they've achieved a great deal. You'll start off with perhaps anything up to 200 students. From that, perhaps you're left with 30 or so students. You then go on to up to a 4-week training phase, during which time You do various foreign weapons, range work, etc.
Safety on the G3 rifle, gentlemen. Cock the weapon, look inside, make sure there are no rounds in the chamber. Let your working parts go forward, take your safety catch off, squeeze your trigger, apply the safety catch again, and that is your weapon cleared.
You're constantly assessed, constantly.
Move slightly
There's
forward.
a great deal of pressure on you because you're being taught new skills. You have to assimilate those skills very rapidly and produce the goods in front of the eyes of the instructors who are there to assess you.
Ease, springs. What we're going to run through now is the load, the unload and the make safe. Stand by. Loud! Dave, apply your safety catch here. Come on, come on, come on. Make safe.
It's extremely important that you can familiarise yourself and effectively use all foreign weapon systems. When operating worldwide, operating with indigenous forces, you must have the ability to pick up that weapon
Advance.
and use it effectively.
Turn to your right. Kneel in position. Up. Advance. About turn. Stop. Apply your safety catch. Okay, you were leaning too far into it, leaning too far. Just stand to the side, will you? Now watch. Up. Okay. Up. 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 Turn to your right.
Driving is an extremely important skill within the regiment. You have to have the ability to use a car as a means of getting out of hazardous situations. When you're involved in VIP protection, escort drills, where you're suddenly confronted with an attempt on your life or someone who's your duty to protect, and you have to carry out various manoeuvres to enable you to escape from that incident.
We do a lot of training in car mobility, civilian car mobility for operations in Northern Ireland, and it pays off. We do all sorts of stuff like anti-ambush drills, reversing out of trouble. It's all designed for urban warfare to get yourself out of trouble when you're penned in, basically, and a car has a big target.
Get down! Get down!
Also, during continuation, you'll do demolition skills, medical skills, patrol skills, and how to react under enemy fire. Then you'll go to the jungle, where all these drills and skills will be enhanced upon, practiced, tested.
It's a hard month, a very difficult month, and again a test of your personality and character, because if you suffer from claustrophobia, it soon starts to show in the jungle because of the close quarters of the vegetation, the jungle canopy. All you can just see is sort of green, a sea of green all around you, and we've had guys fail because it brought out claustrophobia, and they just couldn't stand being cooped up in the jungle. And of course, sickness fails a few because you can soon catch some weird and wonderful tropical diseases in the jungle. There are plenty of them around, and many guys have failed because they've got all that way, and then some insect has bitten them, and the health has deteriorated, and they've been medevaced out of the jungle, never to be seen again.
And out of potential 30 to 40 extremely motivated candidates, you will lose another 50% during this phase. But the final test is still to come.
The whole idea about the manhunt in the escape and evasion phase of selection and training is to give the guys some idea what it's like to evade an enemy force, to be on the run, to have to live off the land, to try and escape from dogs, helicopter searches, troops on the ground moving in extended line through wooded areas. It's to give the guy that feeling of self-sufficiency.
You're set loose in an old, ill-fitting army greatcoat held together by a piece of string, a pair of old baggy trousers, a pair of boots tied together with a bit of string, and set off into the night. You're given a short head start. You have a button compass and a sketch map. You're not allowed to use roads. You're not allowed to use tracks. You're not allowed to enter buildings. And you're constantly pursued by a hunter force, using all the modern technology available to them.
It's designed to put you under severe stress. Depending on when you get caught, depends how much stress that you have to go through. For example, they do a 7-day exercise, and if you got caught on day 1, then you've got 6 days of stress and interrogation. If you're captured by a combat formation that's just been in action, they may have taken a lot of casualties. Some of those guys may have lost their mates. They're not going to treat you kindly. They're going to be thinking, these bastards have done my mates, let's do them. We know it's only an exercise, but if this person is of a weak mind and he's going to crack on an exercise, he's not going to last 5 minutes in enemy hands.
When captured, you're mentally and physically drained. You're under no illusion that that was the easy bit. For the next 36 hours, the screws will be turned.
The reason why when you're captured you are in fact strung up in a stress position, this is to find if the mind can survive the boredom and the stress of being suspended in that position for long periods of time. It also very much weakens the will to refuse to answer questions, to refuse to sign documents. If you're a weak-willed person, you're looking at that document and thinking, I don't want to go back in that stress position. I'm going to sign this document. Get me out of here.
Get your legs up! Move your legs up! Come on, guys!
You are pushed to the absolute limit that an exercise would allow. This, again, is an attempt to simulate rough handling by an enemy force, because if you're going to crack on an exercise, you sure as hell are going to crack in the hands of some bent and twisted third world country.
At no stage do you ever see any other candidates. If you'd ever attempt to remove your sandbag, immediately result in failure.
There was one particular exercise that used to be carried out where you were put into a little hut that was no bigger than a dog kennel and locked in it. It had a corrugated iron roof, and the guards would beat the roof with chains. The sound was horrendous. Now, if you're a person that suffers from claustrophobia, that brings it on very quickly. And this rapidly becomes a mental condition. It's a play on phobias.
All this stuff is constantly gone around you, and you're extremely knackered. You haven't slept, you haven't eaten, you haven't drank. You're physically knackered, you're mentally knackered. What you must do is always, always keep your mind focused.
This is classic disorientation. An old favourite used to be handcuffing you to the railway line, and then you'd hear the rolling stock coming down the line. Unbeknown to you, because you hooded, of course, unbeknown to you, there was a set of points a few feet away from your body where the rolling stock would miss you, but you didn't know this. And all you could hear is the rolling stock rumbling down the rail. Just another attempt to completely stress you out, weaken your will, frighten you to death, basically.
It has been known for hard men, people who perceive themselves as hard men, to physically and mentally break down to sobbing wrecks during this process.
This is a test of your mental capacity to face up to an interrogator and basically pit your wits against him.
Take that blindfold off. A bit warmer in here, son, isn't it? You okay? All right, what's your number?
2463783.
If you come through that, you could say that all facets of your character, personality, physical build-up has been tested.
What's your first name?
Can't answer that question, sir.
Don't you know your first name?
Can't answer that question, sir.
What unit are you in, son?
Can't answer that question, sir.
Don't you know what unit you're in?
Can't answer that
Your
question.
name's Wayne. Is that correct? Is your name Wayne? Well, I know your name's Wayne. Why don't you tell me it? What's your name, son?
I can't answer that question.
Don't you know your own fucking name?
Can't answer that question.
Okay, I'll tell you what I've got here.
Most selections lose people who've been fit, they've gone over the Brecon Beacons, good timings, they've been in the jungle, good map reading, and then when they're pitted against an interrogator who's putting them under mental torture, it just proved too much. They blow a fuse, can't hack it, and all that they did before, waste of time. They're out of it.
I'm there, okay? Just get on with that, son.
I can't do that, sir.
What's wrong, son? Can't you write?
I can't do that.
Can't you write? There's something wrong with you. You fucking dumb! You don't even know your fucking name! You can't write! What is wrong with you, man?
Can't do that, sir.
What's your name?
Can't do
What
that.
unit are you in?
Can't answer that question.
Where do you come from? You come from Gloucester, son! I know you come from Gloucester! Sign that form! I said sign it! Can't you write, son? Didn't you go to school? Didn't you go to school? Do you want to get back to the compound, man? Do you want to get back to the compound?
Can't answer that question, sir.
I'm fucking send you back to the compound anytime I want. Sign those fucking forms. Sign them. Don't! Get that piece of shit out of the fucking wall.
Let's go to the wall.
Are you fucking dumb, son? Did you go to school? Do you
very difficult to gauge the length of time that you've been enduring questioning. At some stage, you'll be taken out, and you think to yourself, there we go, another one. Get yourself geared up for it. Only be taken into a different room, your hood being removed, and there's the DS, directing staff that you recognise and know. There'll be food there, there'll be tea or coffee there, he'll have a big smile on his face, he'll hold out his hand, shake your hand, and say, for you, the war is over.
And even when you've finished, you don't know whether you've passed, because you wait outside the selection troop office and you're called in individually. And I went in and I'd passed, and it was great. What satisfaction. And it is brilliant to get that wing dagger. Brilliant.
But once an SAS soldier receives his badge with the famous wing dagger, he can find himself fighting in any theatre of war. For Soldier I, that meant the deserts of Oman.
From 1970 to 1976, the British fought a secret war in Oman, a war that no one's ever heard of. In that war, many people died. Some were heroes. In the early days, our main task was to support the Sultan's armed forces. Since the communist takeover of Aden in 1967, the communist regime, backed of course by Moscow, was supporting the rebels in Dhofar with a direct arms supply line. If it had been allowed to carry on, they would have worked their way right up to the top of Muscat, and they would have probably captured the Musandam Peninsula, which looks straight across at the Straits of Hormuz, which is one of the most tactical sea lanes in the world. They could have cut the world in half. It could have all led eventually to the Third World War if we hadn't controlled the region. There were 9 of us. We were all seasoned soldiers, veterans. Most had served in Borneo, Aden. They were good, well-trained soldiers who were steady under fire. Fuzz. He liked a few drinks, did Fuzz. A man who wore Afghan jackets and beads. Fuzz always used to carry around with him a battery-operated tape recorder, and his favourite tape was The Easy Rider. Became a sort of an anthem. A very good mortar man. He would end up carrying the day in many respects. Labber, a man of immense physical courage, determination and humour. A man who never knew fear. A man who could carry enormous weights on his back all day long and still go out on the piss at night. A warrior. This man would save my life. Tak, his brother in arms, another Fijian, who would carry on the fight even though seriously wounded. His back shot away, propped up. He would fire an SLR, which has got a particularly aggressive kick. He would carry on firing that rifle, even though he must have been in extreme physical pain. He wouldn't surrender. Tommy, first-class medic, one of the boys, good to be with, a free-faller, handsome guy. He didn't even get a medal for running up under fire, and they never recognised him. Mike Keeley, his father won the DSO in the Second World War. Young troop officer, brave, courageous, did his job on the occasion. The intelligence briefing we got was of a bunch of insurgents who would fight to the death. They knew all the latest guerrilla tactics. They had the full range of Soviet weapons, and they had a supply route back up from Aden, a communist port. Remember, you must win the hearts and the minds of a population to win that sort of a battle scenario. We were given a house by the Wali of Mirbat. It had a good flat roof where we could form a defensive position. We mounted a GPMG in the sustained fire role on one corner of the building. From this position we had a good view of the Mirbat plain, also a good view of the fort, the DG fort, which was a Dhofar gendarmerie position, and we set up in the Bat House, not knowing that it would lead to one of the decisive battles against communism that's been fought since Korea.
We've just about completed our 5 months tour, and we were handing over to another squad who's arrived the day before, and we were just going through with them the type of job we were doing. The morale is always very, very high, especially when you're looking forward to going home. We've done 5 months, and it's been quite a hard 5 months. We were involved with the same squad at the time, up in the hills. We had so many battles, working together, working 2 squads at a time. People have seen actions, almost every day in the mountains. But as far as we were concerned, we were all looking forward to going home. And this was our last night, and we were due to go back to Salalah, and from there we go back to UK. And everybody was all relaxed, and nobody ever expected anything like that to happen, especially when it's your last day.
The night before the battle, we had a visit from the G Squadron rep. G Squadron were about to take over. We, B Squadron, had come to the end of our 3-month tour. Some of the guys had gone to bed early, myself included. Labber, who liked to drop a run, and Fuzz decided to get stuck into G Squadron's issue of rum. We'd used ours up. You could hear the low hum of stories from Borneo, because Labber and Fuzz had both been in Borneo before. So I must have drifted off to sleep. My first recollections of the battle beginning must have been in the small hours. I could hear this thudding and a rumbling noise. Unbeknown to us, the night picket on Jebel Ali had already been taken out and put to the knife. The first thing I saw was about 40 to 50 Adu. They suddenly began moving across our front, advancing at speed. It was obvious that the fort and the 25-pounder was their objective. If they'd taken that and turned it on us, it would have all been over. The steel shutters crash to the ground. Humanity and compassion are locked outside. You don't think of the enemy as human beings. They are a running, shouting, aggressive, lunging threat. To be on fire, Labber had already run up to the BG fort and was firing the 25-pounder. We could see the flash, we could see the movement, we could see all the activity around the base of the fort. We'd had a radio contact with him on the Tokai, and he was firing on registered targets. Very difficult when you think that's a 3-man gun crew, and he was firing on it on his own. message, a garble message a bit later, to say that he'd been chinned. At this point, that Tackner made a personal decision that he would go and join his Fijian brother, and he just disappeared into the gloom.
Blubber called us saying that he's been chinned. What he meant was he had a graze on his chin, either ricocheted or a bullet. About between 300 and 400 yards up on a hill. I ran up, dodging, taking cover when I had to. Advancing towards the fort, you know, the firing is getting heavier from all directions.
Keely then tried to get in contact with Tack, who had taken a Tokai with him, so that he could have an up-to-date situation report of what was going on around the gun pit. He couldn't get through to the Tokai in the gun position, so he then had to make a personal decision to go and find out what was going on up there. Set, still keying out for reinforcements.
Copy out the main door, boss. We'll turn back forward. Take your equipment.
I finished the message and Mike Keely just turned and said, fire us in, which meant I had to get up on the 5-0 Brown and cover him in. So the die was cast. I put down the headphone on the 316 and raced up to the 5-0 Brown and waited. I remember looking down and I could just see the pair of them slipping off to the right, where there was a small wadi that ran up towards the DG fort, and off they went, pepper potting forward, one man covering, one man firing. And then that was the last I saw them. The 25-pounder still firing, belching flame, there was smoke swirling everywhere, there was heavy machine gun fire hitting it, there was mortar rounds landing. The whole area was just a frenzy of activity.
Lab and I knew at the time that we were almost surrounded, so Lab crawled away from the gun pit towards the mortar. I looked at Labba, he looked at me, and it's as if he knew something was going to happen. And I had this crack. And I turned, and all I could see was a blood, a bullet hit his neck. And the blood was pouring out, and Labba died instantly within seconds. Toby was the first one to come in over the Sanger, and as he was climbing over the Sanger, he got shot on the jaw. And all I could see was his face being totally torn apart.
McAleese!
The best sound that I ever heard was the screaming of jets, strike master, that came from the sea, burst us once, did a circle and came in with heavy armaments. firing machine guns and more or less right on top of us. And I believe the only thing that saved us at the time was the jets.
The battle, in fact, was drawing to a close. We'd had quite a few successful airstrikes, and the Adu were in retreat. I didn't know at this stage of the game what the casualties were. We had lost comms earlier in the battle. Somebody had ordered up a Kazivac chopper, and that flew past the bat house and landed up by the DG fort. I could see them loading bodies in. It then took off again, flew towards the bat house and landed near the front door. I could clearly see from where I was up in the 50 Browning, the command post, I could clearly see the pilot with his arm waving, beckoning, so I thought I'd better go down and see what's going on. I ran down the stairs, out through the front door, and there he was still beckoning. I ran over to where the pilot was seated, and he shouted over the noise of the rotor blades, "Can you check the bodies in the back? We believe one of them's yours." I peeled back the blanket on the first body, and there was a dead Arab, gunshot wounds to the head in the middle, and the dead Arab. And then I got to the top body, peeled back the blanket. It was the figure of a male laying face down, head laying on the crook of the arm, the features obscured. I attempted to turn the body over, but rigor mortis had set in. It was solid. I then had to lever the whole body up using the crook of the elbow. As I levered the body upwards, I could just see Laba's features. Now, the jawline had been shot away, but I could tell it was Laba by his eyes. They were still open. It was like a sledgehammer blow to the morale. I was still hyped up after the battle, but all feelings of exhilaration disappeared in a flash. Here was a man I'd drunk with, fought with, laughed with, and here he was, laid out on a stretcher, stiff as a board. It was just too much. I was engulfed with sorrow at the loss of such a comrade. So no. If he hadn't carried on the fight, that position would probably have been overrun. And who knows what would have happened then. He was given an MID because they claimed the war was secret, and if they'd have given him a VC, the publicity, he would have been front page news back in UK, and then everybody would have descended on Dhofar just like they did in Vietnam with the Yanks, and we would have suffered accordingly. So they gave him an MID. You can get an MID for walking down the Falls Road in Northern Ireland. We were told when we got back that every man would get at least an MM. That never materialised. We were then told that Takavisi would get the DCM, and that's fair enough. And then we were told that Mike Keeley got the DSO, just as his father had done in the Second World War. And then we heard that Tommy, who'd run up under fire to give medical aid and got shot in the process, would get nothing, not even an MID. I mean, that in itself is worth a VC. He got nothing. The rest, we just have our memories. In January 91, the Iraqis began launching Scud missiles on Israel. If Israel had retaliated, it would have been politically impossible for the coalition Arab forces to remain in the war. The Western alliance against Iraq would have disintegrated. The SAS were tasked to go deep behind enemy lines, locate the Scuds, and take them out. Failure might have given victory to Saddam Hussein. They would cross the border in strength, fully armed, fully tooled up, maximum ammunition. They would then search until they located a mobile Scud position. They would drive in, guns blazing, destroy it, drive off into the night. This film is about two successful missions deep behind enemy lines. Young trooper Matt's story. The first mission is about the first shot fired in anger on the ground in the Gulf War. The first kill. White-eyed, up close.
Initially, they talked about us doing some form of hostage release because of all the hostages that had been taken in Kuwait and then moved up towards Baghdad. And then taskings changed throughout as the theatre actually built up. They started looking at us going into Western Iraq, deep behind enemy lines, and doing some form of search and destroy. Basically as a disruption force to draw the attention away from Kuwait. There was very limited information on the enemy that was going to bump into, even though they said that it could be substantial. We just went out there basically and just see who we'd come across. We knew that we were better than anybody that we were going to come across. So I think that's where our professionalism then clicked in. It was a mixture of terrains. I can't ever remember coming across any sort of desert environment like sand, like you saw on the people saw on the TVs. It was very, very rugged terrain. We'd been driving all night at that stage. We'd been across the border in the region of about 4 to 5 days. We'd been in as layup point as LUP for most of the day. And what we'd tried to do is get into dead ground, into a depression in the ground if we could, to keep concealed, especially at a great distance. We put sentries out upon the high ground, which could then identify anything coming towards us, and cammed the vehicles up, put big cam nets over the vehicles, and basically just got on with administration, cleaning weapons, sorting yourselves out, getting some food down you, and then eventually getting some sleep. At about 3 o'clock that afternoon, one of the sentries that was on high ground pointed across to down the wadi. There was a vehicle coming towards us, a small Jeep type vehicle. And all of a sudden it just drove straight towards us, and we didn't know who the hell it was. We obviously knew it was Iraqi,
So, you know, you can only take it that it's obviously enemy. Because the immediate shock that, Jesus, there's a vehicle coming towards us, it did cause a bit of an initial flap once we identified who they were.
Some fuckers coming. Come on.
He drove right up towards our vehicle and stopped within about 30 metres of it. The driver got out, the commander got out, and two guys stayed in the back. And we was all under the cam net, getting ready to let these guys have it. And as he came towards us, I thought, Jesus, I'm going to kill this bloke. And, you know, the first kill, our lad lifted his weapon up. At that point, he had a stoppage. But at the exact same point, I dropped the guy. This all happened in an instant. I'm talking literally over seconds. I got up with another guy and started moving towards the vehicle. As we got there, one lad was pulling the body out of the back and there was a jet of blood just spurted out, which stuck in my mind, you know, because that's the graphic detail of it.
Shemag him up. Get him over to the vehicle, quick as you can. Move it. Get him back now. Get him back.
This one's dead. He's had it.
Okay. Get back and check the vehicle. Check the guys, get ready to move.
The guy died very, very quickly. The other Iraqi was massively traumatised. He was in great shock because all of a sudden he was on a normal reconnaissance for the area, and next thing he knows, everybody that's with him has been killed. They were the reconnaissance group, the command group for a very large artillery division, and the information that they had on them gave the Allies a massive amount of information of what was going on in Iraq, basically. We was told afterwards, when we eventually got back across the border, there was somewhere in the region of 30,000 troops coming into our immediate area where we was, and at that point we was actually surrounded by them already.
Victor II, an Iraqi military installation responsible for communications and the guiding of mobile scuds. Heavily defended. A classic hit-and-run night raid that echoes the SAS days of World War II.
We used to get sit reps every night from headquarters telling us what was going on. An intelligence report came in that there's a big microwave installation to our north, which they wanted us to go and recce it with the intention of destroying it. Basically what we had was a building, a square building, with a massive antenna in it, with microwave dishes all around it. And it was surrounded by a number of different vehicles, buildings, porta cabins, and the such like. We was tasked basically to go into the installation with a big bag of explosives, which would be on a safety fuse, which would give us in the region of about a minute and a half to get back out. The theory was that we might be fighting us way in and out because we didn't know how many troops would be in there. But that's how we was going to work it. Peace through superior firepower, that's how we was going to do it. Those two vehicles that was very close to the objective, two big vehicles, one of them with what looked like a water bowser or a fuel bowser. I was tasked to go and ID that one and just watch that. Everything was very, very quiet. You know, you could literally hear a pin drop. We never thought that we would fail in his mission. As for thinking about not coming back, yeah, it entered my mind every night, and it normally entered my mind just before we started off. And at that point, I would always think, well, is this going to be the night? You know, and I'd say little things to myself and occasionally offer myself a little prayer that everything would be all right for not just myself, but for all the boys.
Shut the fuck up!
We'd initiated the contact and the whole place erupted. Installation. We've got a minute and a half before the explosives went off. We started taking quite a bit of incoming. There was a massive amount of fire coming from our right. Tracer rounds were then starting to come very close, and it's a very weird feeling when you've got these, what I call red hornets, flying at you, and they're hitting the ground all around you and bursting all over the place. Unknown reason, not one bloke was actually touched. We just were very, very lucky. The advantage that we had is that we had the bottle to go and do it. And you know, the cliche is, and it's very, it may sound very silly, who dares wins, but at the end of the day, we did have that going for us. We knew what we were doing, They didn't know who the hell we were, and we went in there and achieved his mission, and we didn't lose anybody in doing so. When we got back across the border a few weeks later, a few of us approached the intelligence guys basically to start doing some finger poking and find out what had actually gone on. They informed us that there were in excess of between 250 to 300 enemy troops on that one location, and we realised then that we'd been up against a far bigger force, but in no way superior.
Every mobile column that set off to carry out a mission achieved their aim 100% successfully. The Iraqis were forced to move their Scuds out of range of Israel. Those that remained were destroyed on the ground.
During the Falklands War, the biggest threat the British task force faced was from the Argentine Exocet missiles.
As the landings began, British ships were being sunk at the rate of almost one a day. The British task force faced the probability of losing one of the aircraft carriers, Hermes or Invincible, which would have jeopardised the entire British operation to recapture the Falklands.
The SAS were tasked to go secretly onto the Argentine mainland.
The plan was for B Squadron to be loaded into 2 C-130s on the Ascension Isles. We would then fly across the South Atlantic to the Rio Grande Air Base on Tierra del Fuego, crash in on the runway and destroy all the aircraft. Disable the Exocet missiles, kill all the pilots and the officers' mess, and then abandon the Hercules C-130 aeroplanes. We would then have to escape and evade to the Chilean border on foot, 40 or 50 odd miles away. It would be the biggest operation the SAS had carried out since the Second World War, but it would be a suicide mission.
But at the 11th hour, when the government was told that the SAS could lose an entire squadron in such an attack, they vetoed the plan and ordered the SAS to come up with an alternative.
Instead of sending the entire squadron in the C-130, the new option was to send in an 8-man team by helicopter. They were to locate the airbase and destroy the aircraft themselves. They loaded into a stripped-down, long-range helicopter for the low-level dash to the mainland. If there was any problem with locating the drop-off point, they were to be flown onto the border with Chile and to conduct the mission from there. It was a one-way flight. The helicopter crew were briefed to ditch the chopper in Chile and initiate the explosives that had been packed into the chopper floor. As they approached the mainland, the handheld radar warning device suddenly began to ping, warning the patrol and the pilot that a hostile radar had locked on. It now pinged continuously. It was agreed that the mission should continue. They made an attempt to find the first drop-off position, nearly crashing into the side of a hill, until they found a valley where they could fly up undercover, land the chopper, and do a PNG sweep of the area, looking for the drop-off point. By this time, the chopper was drastically short of fuel. There could be no more map recce's of the area, or else they wouldn't reach the ditching point in Chile. The border option was on. Drop off on the Chilean border, do the job from there, get out quickly, hit and run. After drop-off, no one knew exactly where they were, but by mid-afternoon the team were already deep inside Argentina and were heading for the Rio Grande Air Base. They sent their first radio message back to Hereford, informing base that they were in enemy territory. The Eagle has landed. But by now 2,000 Argentinian Marines were searching the countryside for them. The patrol was all for carrying on with the mission, despite the huge odds stacked against them. but it was decided by the headshed that the timescale and the distance involved precluded the hit-and-run operation. Therefore, the ops room in Hereford decided to abort the mission. The patrol now went into the recovery and extraction phase.
Far from being lost and bewildered and wandering through the rugged Chilean countryside as at first thought, it now seems the British crew have been successfully spirited out of Chile. Sources talk of a top-secret operation which led to between 3 and 5 British crew from the Sea King flying out of Punta Arenas, probably on one of the daily commercial flights. Chilean investigators assure the crew deliberately destroyed the helicopter with an incendiary grenade. It seems the incident is so shrouded in secrecy that few people, except senior Chilean Air Force commanders, know the details.
On Monday the 30th of April 1980, 6 Arab terrorists took over the Iranian embassy in London and held 26 people hostage. The 6-day siege that followed developed into one of the most menacing situations the government had faced. It ended in an action that would live forever in regimental history. On the morning of April the 30th, 1980, about halfway through the morning, the bleepers, which is attached to your belt, suddenly all went off. And when I looked down at mine, it had the 3 9s, which means that this was going to be the real thing, that a terrorist incident had taken place somewhere, and it wasn't an exercise. We all looked around in disbelief. The guy who was doing 3IC of the team came into the killing house, and he said, "Hey, get the guys down. There's a siege underway." This was it, the real thing. It was going to happen. Pack your gears, boys, we're going to war.
It's not an exercise, it's actually real. It looks like we'll be going on a real job. Of course, everybody goes, bollocks. You know, you think it's all wind up. But as it turned out, it was for real. We all got called into the briefing room, and the Colonel turned up and a few others and explained what was happening down here in London. And so everybody sort of, oh, yippee, you know, this is going to be real.
36 of us loaded up in Hereford and drove through the night. Because at this stage the police had contained the siege, we didn't know if we'd be using an aggressive role or not. It all depended on what the terrorists did next. We arrived at Regent Park Barracks, West London, about 11:30 p.m. that night. This was going to be the holding area for the next couple of days until they made a decision to move us up to number 14, Princess's Gate, which was actually next door to the terrorist stronghold. This was a real-life operation, so we were totally kitted out. We had extra ammunition, we had extra stun grenades. Myself, I had my body armour, Bristol body armour, with the high-velocity plate, the Hecklerkoch MP5. I had my Browning, the lightweight Northern Ireland boots. They're good for running in and kicking doors down. My S6 respirator, and also to be worn under the body armour we had MBC suits, which is a good gas hood to give you protection against the gas that we were going to pump into the rooms at the front.
The equipment that I'm actually wearing is identical to what I was wearing on the day of the siege. The boots were a choice, really, of Northern Ireland boots or a type of comfortable boot which you wanted to wear yourself. The coveralls are non-fire resistant, but you wore fire resistant underwear underneath the coveralls. You had a choice of gloves, either to wear gloves or not wear gloves. I prefer not wearing gloves, as I did on the day, because I find I can shoot better without gloves on. The two weapons that we used on the day were the MP5, which I'm holding in my hand now. This would be the primary weapon for the assaulters. All assaulters would carry an MP5, or the MP5K, which was the MP5 Kurtz. You had the choice depending on what job you were doing. It carries a magazine of 30 rounds, and we carry 3 spare magazines in the magazine holder. That would be your primary weapon. The backup weapon would be the 9mm pistol. That is a tried-tested British Army weapon, and again has been used on lots of training exercises, and it is always used as the backup weapon for a member of the team.
We'll use anything that will give us that little bit extra, that little bit to give us the upper hand. And if you're properly kitted out, you're unstoppable. You do feel weighted down, but I can assure you, when you're in a live operation and your body's charged with adrenaline, it's like you're running around in a t-shirt. On the following evening of May the 1st, we then got the word that things were deteriorating, so we moved undercover in 4 rented vans to a position in the back streets of Kensington, out of sight of the terrorist stronghold, and then we made our way across and through back gardens until we could gain access without being seen to number 14. On there we set up business, got organised, and this would be our home until the siege was busted on Monday, May the 5th. And it was from here that we did what we call target appreciation, going over everything in minute detail, so that in your own mind you could carry out the assault without any further orders once the balloon went up.
The first team to arrive there generally set up what they call the immediate action, commonly known throughout the regiment as the IA. What happens is the team arrives and they get the sketchy information that was available initially. That information is updated with all the latest information on site, where you tend to get a little bit more information, and then from there they work out a plan which is due to be ready and operational within about 30 minutes of actually arriving on site. The team commanders then come back, get their men together, brief the team on how they see it going, tell each man what he's going to do on a formal briefing, and that is the first plan that is ever put together. Not once in the 6 days did we have our black uniform off. Everybody would have had a bullet in the chamber in the MP5 and any other weapon, including the 9mm pistol.
Approximately 11 o'clock that night, Saturday night, we made our way up onto the roof of number 14, picked our way across the roofs until we got to number 16, found the skylight and took a good look at it. The lead surrounding the window did look in poor shape, and the actual wooden surround was rotten and looked in a very weak condition. I could see there was a dodgy looking lock on the hasp, so I pulled that off and the hasp came free, and then we were able to totally open the skylight itself. We had access. I thought, this is it. I'm going to be the first man into the Iranian embassy. So I suspended myself head and shoulders down into the room and had a good look round. So you could say I was the first man into the Iranian embassy. I took in all the details of the room, and we reported it back on the radio, but then it was decided not to further take any action at the moment, as negotiations were reaching a critical stage. So we withdrew from the skylight with all the relevant information, and that was written into the deliberate action as a guaranteed entry point. The news seemed hopeful. We knew the situation was desperate.
Bitty! Bitty!
Deadlines, noises in the wall, false promises.
My name is Lavasani, man Lavasani. Run in.
The whole psychological game was wearing them down.
What sounded like 2 or 3 shots were heard coming from the direction of the Iranian embassy. And the significance of those noises is being investigated.
As soon as bodies started to be slabbed, being taken out on a stretcher, the feeling within the squadron and the men that I was working with at the time changed fairly dramatically. There's no turning back after killing people on British soil. There's no second chance. Their fate was definitely sealed at that point.
Jack, get rolling.
It's with the deepest regret that I have to inform you that further 3 shots were fired, and just about 7 o'clock a dead body was pushed out of the front door, and we have recovered that body. It has now been removed to the mortuary. We, as you know, have tried exceedingly hard to avoid this situation developing into this tragic turn that it's taken now. And all we could hope is that we are still trying to plead with them to be sensible, to be humane, and to release those hostages that are in there. And I can only hope that the good Lord will still be with us in this very difficult time for everybody.
Did the gunmen ask for a new deadline?
I'm not prepared to discuss it.
Can you tell us what nationality it is?
I don't know. I don't know.
Was it Middle Eastern? I don't know.
Diplomacy had failed. The police could do no more. We were out the door before the statement was finished. The terrorists, they were told by their manipulators that it would be a 48 hours operation, that no harm would come to them because the British had gone soft. They thought they went for a good day out. They just hadn't heard of the SAS. The terrorists wanted a bus to the airport and a plane out of the country. What they didn't know was that the only way they were going to get out was either prison or a box. The terrorists constantly played with grenades. They had grenades in each pocket. I mean, you don't mess around with guys like that. You go in hard. You go in hard and kill them, or else they'll kill you. While the negotiators kept them talking, we moved into the final assault positions.
We didn't know exactly where the hostages were, bearing in mind there were something like 56 rooms in the Iranian embassy. The team that I was with were tasked to go to the back door. The idea was to blow the door in with explosive entry, follow that into the rooms and clear all the rooms on the bottom floor.
There was the front balcony that we've all seen on the newsreels. To the rear, we had guys abseiling down to the second floor, and of course we had the people coming in through the skylight to cover the top 2 floors. So we had all floors covered by those entry points. Owen, the head terrorist, was getting extremely agitated, and then all of a sudden he heard what he thought were suspicious noises. I looked up and I could see the abseilers now coming down. I could see one of the abseilers becoming tangled because of the sheer amount of equipment he was carrying. I thought, Christ, it's going to go wrong, it's going wrong. And then we had a charge laid out to blow the French window door in. We couldn't blow the charge because the upblast would have caught the guy that was swinging in the abseil ropes. All I heard in the earpieces was, go, go, go. Search and destroy. Groups splitting off left and right. Groups going upstairs. Stun grenade out. Got to follow it down into the bottom of the cellar. Got to go for room clearing drills. No sledge, no shotgun. Got to drill the locks. Society at that moment in time. We had created our own society within number 16. The law of the jungle, kill or be killed. And for that moment in time, we could have been on a different planet. It wouldn't matter who was in there, what weapons they had. They couldn't stop us.
You're not going to go in there to take prisoners. Somebody in there with a weapon, he's already been killing somebody. You're not going to go in there and say, hands up, I'm the police, or I'm some sort of force or other. You're going to go in there, you see them, you're going to shoot them. And you're going to shoot them, you're going to kill them. Yeah? Remember, a wounded animal is always more dangerous than a dead one.
There was a terrorist actually ran behind us. Now, where he came from, to this day, I'll never know. But he actually ran behind us, and Derek had let off some rounds at him. So we thought, right, we've got to go in the room, confirm where he is, because we didn't know if he was dead, alive, or whatever at the stage. So you're going in there, so we thought, well, we'll throw a flashbang in anyway. At least that'll give us a bit of light when we go in, you know, and it'll cover us at the door. I mean, if he's still alive, he's going to have his weapon pointing to that door. Yeah, that's his lifeline as such. But no sign of El Badi. And Mal's shouting, not a bit of word in Arabic. Basically, he was shouting, we're the police, we're the police. And what they're trying to do was to get the Arab, if he was alive, to shout back, basically to identify his position so we could sort of finish him off. And we thought, right, we'll just leave it for a minute. We'll get another couple of guys that's got torches.
We've got a guy in there, well, yeah, because we can't fucking see him. So you two guys with torches, you come first. Yeah, you get the right, you get the right. Go! Go!
With a rough idea where the guy must be hiding in the room, and as it was, came in there, torches on. This bloke he's lying on a chase lounge as such, yeah, and it's sort of sprawled there like, you know, you see in old-fashioned films, and that was it basically. As soon as the light hit him, it was, you know what I mean? I don't know how many rounds each person sort of fired, but at least it put him on his ass, and that was him at the game. He was just left. I mean, he actually got roasted, you know. You could smell it. You could smell the flesh burning.
Having entered the room opposite the telex room, Tommy chased a terrorist from that room into the telex room. Prior to that, the other terrorist in that room had actually shot and killed one of the hostages and wounded a couple more of the hostages. He jumped into the hostages to hide. The trouble was he still had a pistol with him and he still had an hand grenade. Tommy asked the nearest hostages, "Where's the terrorist? Where's the terrorist?" They pointed to the terrorist because it is believed now they didn't like that particular terrorist. Tom's words were, "Search him, search him." On kicking his legs apart, a 9mm pistol was seen between his legs. The terrorist turned around with a grenade in his hand, about to pull the pin, when he was shot by one of our blokes.
Once the cellar was cleared, our next rallying point was into the foyer. So we came along the corridor of the cellar, up the stairs and into the foyer. In the foyer there was confusion, there was smoke, I could hear screams, I could hear gunfire. I could see a line of guys forming up on the stairs, and the word came down that they were going to pass the hostages out. Within seconds, the first hostages started to appear, and they began to be passed down the stairs, hand to hand. Don't forget there's gas swirling around. They don't have gas masks on, we have. They're hysterical, they're frightened, so they have to be physically manhandled from man to man.
He came down the stairs. He got to the position where I was. I personally saw a grenade. I opened fire on him and shot him. Didn't affect anybody else. We just had one dead terrorist laying at the bottom of the stairs.
I'll never forget him. He was coming down in a crouch position. His head was down. He knew he didn't have long to live, and then I saw it. In his hand, he had a Russian assault grenade. I thought, I've got to do something, can't open fire, got to neutralise the threat. I brought the MP5 up, and I blatted the guy on the back of the neck. And just as I brought the butt down, his face turned towards me, and he had the look of death about him. He knew he didn't have long to live. He then rolled down into the foyer. 2 to 3 magazines were then emptied into him, and the sound was deafening, and he twitched and vomited his life away on the carpet. But as he did so, the hand holding the grenade flopped out, and there, before us, rolls this grenade, and we all stopped dead, just staring at the grenade, crystal clear, zoomed in on the pin. Was it in? Is the pin in? Is it gonna go off? And in fact, the pin was in. This guy was so unprofessional that he'd left the pin in. No problem.
The actual number of rounds, that was actually confirmed later on when they did the autopsy. I think they got to 78 or something, which is not bad And you consider it 2 seconds, 2-point-something seconds, and there's roughly about 80 rounds in this guy, and he just drops like a sack of spuds.
I think it highlighted to the world that when push comes to shove, the old gloves come off as far as the Brits are concerned. And we proved to the world, if you go in hard against terrorists, they'll fall like a pack of cards. If you go for the ringleaders, take the ringleaders out, the rest will fall like a pack of cards. Appeasement just doesn't work. Negotiating with terrorists just does not work. You've got to go in hard, you've got to hit them hard and teach them a lesson that they won't forget. In other words, you've got to put a bit of stick about. I think it acted as a warning to the terrorist world that if you bring your tactics to UK, you're going to end up on the slab.
The SAS has fought all over the world. However, sometimes the unique training and skills that they possess have been used in the most unexpected circumstances. For the first time, we can reveal the SAS role in one of Britain's major air disasters at Kegworth.
I was en route to Ripon to do my canoe instructor's course. The remainder of the members of my troop. We was on the back of an Army Bedford truck travelling up the M1. We were sat in the back, and suddenly the truck came to a halt and we got slewed across the motorway. These police cars picked their way up towards us. The commander turned around and said, "What's going on?" This policeman replied, "There's been a plane crash up front." He said, "Well, listen," I said, "I've got some very experienced medics on board here. In fact, some are actually fully qualified paramedics. Can we lend any assistance?" The copper looked and thought, "Yeah, OK, follow me." We all jumped out the vehicle and ran to assess the situation. What we saw was a full-sized liner that had smashed itself into the bank and broken into 3 pieces. I myself personally am a fully qualified RDM paramedic. This means I've worked in hospitals and have been involved in major trauma through my regimental experiences around the world. When we actually got into the back of the aircraft, we paused for no more than, I don't know, a second. That was just to take in the sight. Personally, I've never, ever seen anything like it in my life, and would never like to again. The sight that greeted us was horrific. It was like going to a waxworks museum where all the wax had melted into each other. There's literally people who were ripped apart, and the smell and the noise and the sight was pretty horrific. And we quite frankly said, let's go to work. And we did. 2 other members of the troop had gained entrance by the front part of the fuselage, by where the pilot was, and began to work and assist from the front part. We continued to assist from the rear and moved towards each other. Most of the injuries were ankles hanging off, legs hanging off, but with lower body injuries that must have been sort of like ripped off as the plane slammed into the trees. By this time as well, a few other emergency people had arrived. Now the time had been clocking on. The whole time that we was treating people and getting people out, we could hear this baby crying. Where the bloody hell is this baby? Where's this child? And we couldn't find this baby anywhere. Eventually we found this woman sort of in a seat, strapped in, bent over, and when we pulled her forward, the baby was on her lap. She'd covered the baby. And I remember we got the baby. We was quite elated. We thought, God, yeah, we got the baby, and the baby's alive, and it seemed to be okay. So we passed the baby back, and as it came to the back, it said this great chain of people that appeared at the back to pass all the debris and bodies and injured people down. A huge cheer went up outside. I do remember that. Everyone started cheering when the baby came out. It's probably the only high point of the situation. Well, we decided at some stage to leave and hand it over. We moved off down onto the motorway, and it was quite a sight. It was like something from Star Wars. All the lights and all the ambulances, and there's a lot of media coverage. So we sidled off to one side, kept out the way. We got off the motorway and we went to the nearest cafe. No one spoke a word. We all queued up. We went and got coffee, tea, whatever, our drinks. We then went to where this checkout girl was, and she had this look on her face as if she was looking at something that was quite extraordinary. She had a look of amazement on her face. I suddenly realised Phil had a white shirt on. It was covered in blood. I myself had a blue duvet jacket on. It was covered in blood. By our feet and our shoes, there was blood and gore. There's bits of things hanging off us. And we went into the washrooms. And as we started to scrub down and clean ourselves in the washrooms, that's the first time we started to speak to each other. We all said, "What the bloody hell have we just been involved in?" We couldn't believe it. Travelled off back to Ripon, where we was going to start this canoe instructor's course. 8:30 that morning, we drew our kit. We was in the water as if nothing had happened. We actually do a lot of things. We are involved in a lot of other things other than active operations.